Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The first 374 migrants have returned home to Iraq from Belarus today after having failed on multiple occasions to get past the Polish forces on their planned journey to Germany and other countries in Western Europe. Belarusian representatives have stated that a deal with Germany is possible, under which 2,000 migrants will be distributed across the European Union, while Belarus would send another 5,000 home. Germany denies that any such agreement has been reached. There were several attempts to forcibly cross the border yesterday. One of them involved about 500 people. The migrants behaved aggressively. They threw stones and firecrackers. Belarusian security services actively aided the migrants in their attempted crossing. Not only were they blinding us with lasers, but during an attempt to repair the razor wire fence, Belarusian service officers also threw stones at us. In an interview with the German newspaper Bild, Poland's Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki noted that by defending the eastern border, Poland is also defending the border of the European Union and NATO. If we can't stop thousands of migrants right now, hundreds of thousands or even millions will soon come to Europe from Africa, the Middle East and other countries. There are more than 80 million people living in Germany. Would another 50 million be allowed to come? I think the people of Germany wouldn't be happy about it because they want to maintain their standard of living and they want to keep their culture. On Friday, 430 migrants found their way to Minsk airport. Many of them have already flown to Iraq. Tomorrow, the European Union will impose another package of sanctions on Belarus, which will apply not only to people associated with the regime. Yesterday, the Polish Parliament amended a law that will make it possible for the Interior Minister to issue a ban on entry into border areas by means of a decree. The United Kingdom Secretary of State for Defence, Ben Wallace, has expressed support for Poland during a visit to Poland today amid the migrant crisis the country is facing on its border with Belarus. The British have also offered to sell Poland state-of-the-art CAM missiles for its new Narrow air defence system. Visiting his Polish counterpart, the Secretary of State said that the migration crisis on the Belarusian border is meant to destabilise Poland and the region.
Make no mistake, what's happening on the Belarus border is a deliberate and concerted attempt to destabilise not only Poland, but some of the other neighbouring countries like Latvia, etc., to make sure that Europe is weaker in order to further other people's agendas. And the best response to that is that we stand shoulder to shoulder, not only as NATO countries, but also old friends and partners, to send a strong message that we won't allow this to happen.
European countries accuse Minsk of flying in thousands of migrants, mainly from the Middle East, and pushing them to cross the border illegally as a tactic to punish Europe for sanctions imposed over a Belarusian crackdown on pro-democracy protesters. The Polish Minister of Defence, MARIUSZ, said the United Kingdom had sent a reconnaissance group of soldiers to Poland.
And indeed, on
the 11th of November, the first reconnaissance group of UK soldiers visited Poland to talk to their Polish colleagues and to see the border area. And soon a brigade of British military engineers will come to Poland to support Polish troops at the border with Belarus and help with the construction of the temporary fence that protects Poland, but also other NATO countries. Poland said on Thursday the number of attempts to cross its border from Belarus had risen, while thousands of migrants remain trapped on the frontier in frozen woods in a standoff between east and west. The migrants, many of them from Iraq, have been barred from entering Poland or returning to Belarus, though some were due to return to Iraq on the first flight from the Belarusian capital Minsk on Thursday. The Interior Minister of Ukraine, Denis Monastersky, has stated that Ukrainian National Guard servicemen are to reinforce the Ukraine-Belarus border. Yesterday, Parliament also decided to amend a law that will allow border guards to use military equipment. A video released by the National Guard of Ukraine on Wednesday showed servicemen gathering at a base and boarding military vehicles and an aeroplane. Ukraine said earlier it will deploy 8,500 troops and police officers and 15 helicopters to guard its border with Belarus, aiming to prevent possible attempts by migrants to breach the frontier. Ukraine's National Police Chief, Ihor Klimenko, went to the Rivne region which borders Belarus to check the situation on the ground. First of all, we have to calm down the population in case the situation at the border deteriorates. This is the first thing to do. Secondly, we must prevent panic among citizens. We can fight panic with only one thing, by exchanging information and providing additional information which is not classified. Ukraine's parliament passed legislation on Thursday to allow the country's border guards to use military equipment and firearms. The law provides that border guards are now authorised to use coercive measures such as physical force, firearms, weapons and military equipment, including ships and aircraft. The European Union has accused Belarus of encouraging migrants to come to its territory, then pushing thousands of them to cross into Poland and other neighbouring EU states in retaliation for sanctions imposed on Minsk. While not an EU member, Ukraine is wary of becoming another front in the migrant crisis. The Estonian government has summoned 1,700 reserve soldiers on Wednesday for an unannounced exercise which will include installing a razor wire barrier along 40 kilometres of its border with Russia as the migration crisis in nearby Belarus intensifies. The soldiers have been called up in an increasingly tense situation with the Russian military build-up near its border with Ukraine and an escalating hybrid warfare attack by Belarus with the use of illegal migrants against Poland, Latvia and Ukraine. Estonia has previously erected border fences at sections of its border with Russia. The decision was taken after Russia's annexation of Crimea in early 2014. The determination to build such a barrier was further strengthened later the same year when a team made up of members of the Russian security service SFB crossed the border and kidnapped at gunpoint Eston Kovna, an officer of the Estonian Internal Security Service. The Estonian officer was released a month later in a prisoner exchange for a Russian agent. The European Union has blacklisted Lukashenko and dozens of Belarusian state officials and introduced economic sanctions on trade since the crackdown that followed last year's disputed presidential election. It is now expanding the imposition of sanctions on travel agents and airlines involved in what it calls human trafficking behind the border crisis. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.